1776, 1861, 1941. Every American school child memorizes these dates, but nobody ever asks why they are separated by almost exactly 80 years. This is not a coincidence, and it has never been a coincidence. Revolution, Civil War. These are not random catastrophes that happen to cluster in history. They are scheduled events, mechanical, predictable, as reliable as a clock that resets every 80 years. Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II. 3 civilizational collapses, each separated by 1 human lifetime. And if the pattern holds, and it always has, we are living through the 4th one right now. But here is what I want you to hold in your mind through this entire video. Every single one of these crises was triggered by the exact same hidden mechanism. Not war, not economic collapse, not political failure. Something far more fundamental and far more terrifying. I will tell you exactly what it is, but not yet. Because to understand the answer, you first need to understand the pattern. And by the end of this video, you will know not just what is happening in the world right now, but precisely what must happen next. Because the pattern has never been wrong, not once. In 250 years, the clock is ticking. There is a clock hidden inside the structure of human civilization. You cannot see it on any wall. No calendar marks its ticks, but it runs with the precision of a Swiss movement, resetting every 80 years, whether we want it to or not. The ancient Romans had a concept for this. They called it the saeculum, roughly the length of a long human life, the maximum span of time that living memory can hold before it starts to dissolve. Every 80 years, the generation that survived the last crisis is gone. When they die, they take something irreplaceable with them, not just memories, not just stories. They take the visceral, bone-deep understanding of what happens when a civilization ignores its warning signs. And without that understanding, the conditions for catastrophe rebuild themselves. Brick by brick, law by law, norm by norm, brick by brick, until something breaks that was supposed to be unbreakable. This is not ancient history. This is not philosophy. This is the most reliable pattern in 250 years of American history. And in a moment, I will show you the first time this clock struck midnight. What you are about to see in 1776 is not just a revolution. It is a template that has been followed 3 more times, and is being followed again right now. 1776. Stop and think about what the American Revolution actually was. Not the idealized version from textbooks, the real one. 13 colonies against empire, a group of people, many of them ordinary farmers and merchants, decided that the existing social order had to die, not reform, not adjust, die completely. The institutions of British colonial rule were not simply challenged, they were dissolved. The entire framework of governance, taxation, military authority, and social hierarchy was destroyed and rebuilt from scratch. This is what every 4th turning looks like. The existing order does not bend, it breaks. And the people living through it are not passive witnesses. They are forced to choose sides in a conflict that consumes everything. In 1776, you were either a patriot or a loyalist. There was no middle ground. As John Adams reflected years later, the revolution was effected before the war commenced. The revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people. The crisis begins in the mind before it ever reaches the battlefield. The crisis does not care about your comfort. It only asks which side you are on. The American Revolution did not just create a new government. It destroyed the old world so completely that the new one had no choice but to be different. And 80 years later, America would face that exact same question, but with American bullets fired by Americans at Americans. 1861. If you thought 1776 was radical, what happened in 1861 will make your stomach drop. Because by April of that year, the United States, this nation that had just fought a revolution for unity and freedom, turned its guns on itself. 500,000 Americans would die in 4 years of civil war. More Americans killed in the Civil War than in every other American war combined. That is not a historical footnote. That is a civilization tearing itself apart at the seams. And notice what was actually destroyed. Not just lives. The entire economic system of the South, gone. The legal framework of property and labor rights that had existed since the Constitution, dismantled. The political consensus that had held the nation together for 80 years shattered beyond recognition. New institutions had to be built from the rubble. New laws, new social contracts, new definitions of what America meant and who it included. The fourth turning does not just replace leaders. It replaces the entire architecture of society. If this pattern of civilizational transformation is resonating with you, if that uncomfortable recognition is building that we might be standing in a very familiar place right now, hit like and subscribe, because the next discovery in this pattern will leave you speechless. Because 80 years after the Civil War, the whole world would be burning. 1941. Now
World
forget
burns.
everything you think you know about why World War II happened. Economics, politics, ideology, those are the surface explanations. The real answer is simpler and darker. By 1941, every institution that was supposed to prevent global war had already failed. The League of Nations, gone. International trade agreements collapsed. Democratic governments across Europe overthrown one by one. The generation that built the post-World War I order was aging out. The young people who replaced them had never seen what real civilizational collapse looked like. They took risks their grandparents would have recognized as suicidal. They thought they were too modern, too rational, too connected for another world war. And on December 7th, 1941, 80 years after the first guns of the Civil War, the United States was pulled into a conflict that would kill 70 to 85 million people worldwide. 80 million. That is the cost of forgetting. That is the price of a single seculum passing without the lessons being transmitted from one generation to the next. But here is the number that should disturb you most. That was 80 years ago. The people who survived World War II are almost entirely gone. And what comes next in the pattern is exactly what has come next every single time before. Why 80 years? But here is where the story takes a dark turn. Because the 80-year gap is not random. It is not coincidence. It is, according to historians William Strauss and Neil Howe, the precise length of one complete civilizational cycle. What they called, in their landmark 1997 book, The Fourth Turning, a seculum. History is seasonal, and winter is coming. Here is exactly how it works. Every seculum contains 4 generations, each roughly 20 years long. Each generation is shaped by the environment it grows up in. The generation shaped by crisis builds strong institutions to prevent the next one. Their children, raised in safety, begin to question those institutions. Their grandchildren, bored with the restrictions, start dismantling them, and their great-grandchildren, who have never seen collapse, take the risks that guarantee the next one. 1. Crisis generation builds strong institutions. 2. Profit generation questions everything. 3. Nomad generation tears down norms. 4. Hero generation faces the next crisis. 4 generations, 80 years, and then the clock resets. This is not a fringe theory. It has been cited by military strategists, corporate risk analysts, and Defense Department advisors. And its central prediction, that the peak of our current crisis falls between 2020 and 2030, was published 27 years before COVID, January 6th, and everything that followed. The forgetting. Now, let me pause here because this next part changes the entire picture. We tend to think that catastrophe is impossible in our time. We have the internet. We have nuclear deterrence. We have international institutions and global communication. We are too sophisticated, too connected, too rational to repeat the mistakes of the past. That is exactly what every civilization believed right before its collapse. In 1929, leading economists declared the stock market permanently high. In 1938, European leaders called Hitler a reasonable man and signed a peace agreement. Every single generation that walked into catastrophe believed, right up until the moment of impact, that they were too smart for it, too smart for catastrophe. And here is the terrifying truth about where we stand today. The year 2024 marks something specific in demographic history. The last living veterans of World War II, the last people on Earth who remembered from the inside what a true civilizational crisis felt like, are almost entirely gone. The final living barrier between our collective memory and total institutional amnesia is disappearing in real time. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. We are not just forgetting, we have finished forgetting. And what comes after forgetting? the clock runs out. Fourth turning. Here is what keeps historians up at night. When Neil Howe and William Strauss published The Fourth Turning in 1997, they made specific predictions about what America would look like in the 2020s. Not vague predictions, specific ones. Institutional collapse, public trust. They predicted public trust in institutions would fall to historic lows. They said political polarization would become so extreme that compromise would feel functionally impossible. They described a regeneracy event, a shock so severe it forces collective action, as the trigger for the final phase. They named the approximate timing as the 2010 through the 2030. They published this 27 years ago. Now look around you. Every single prediction has already come true. Trust in government, media, and financial institutions is at its lowest recorded levels in American history. Political division has reached Civil War-era intensities, according to political scientists at Carnegie Mellon. COVID-19 arrived exactly on schedule as the regeneracy event the theory predicted. The fourth turning is no longer a warning about the future. It is a description of the present and what Howe wrote about what must happen next. That is the part that will keep you awake tonight. The pattern says the worst is still ahead. Keep watching, because in a moment I will reveal the mechanism I promised you at the very start. 2020, we're in. Let me show you what the pattern looks like in real time. Compare what you are seeing today against what you just learned about 1861 and 1941. Every diagnostic marker of a fourth turning is now lit up simultaneously. In 2020, COVID killed over 1 million Americans and fractured global supply chains for 3 years. Political polarization reached levels not recorded since the Civil War. Surveys show that over 40% of partisans now view the other side not as political opponents, but as enemies. The national debt crossed $34 trillion, with interest payments alone now exceeding the entire defense budget. International institutions, the UN, the WHO, NATO, are fracturing under pressure from within. And most telling of all, trust. The Edelman Trust Barometer has tracked institutional trust since 2001. By 2023, it recorded the lowest levels of trust in government, media, and business in the entire history of its data. Not the lowest in a decade, the lowest ever recorded. Lowest ever recorded. This is not political commentary. This is the fourth turning's diagnostic checklist, and we are checking every single box. But here is what nobody is saying out loud. According to the pattern, we are still in the early phase. The peak of a fourth turning is always the darkest moment, and we have not reached it yet. What gets destroyed? Now, the hidden mechanism I promised you at the very start of this video. The one thing that all four crises share. The trigger that explains everything. Here it is. Remember this in every single case. 1776, 1861, 1941, and now. The crisis was not triggered by the catastrophic event itself. It was triggered by the slow collapse of the institutions that were supposed to prevent that event. And those institutions collapsed for one reason. The people who built them, who had seen firsthand what existence looks like without them, were dead. The builders died. The Constitution's authors were dead by 1820. And 40 years later, the Civil War came. The WW2 generation built the UN, NATO, and the Bretton Woods financial system. And as they disappear, every single one of those systems is cracking from the inside. The pattern is not political, it is biological. It follows the human lifespan. When the builders die, the buildings start to crack. Not immediately, slowly, unnoticed, until someone leans on a wall that used to be load-bearing, and it collapses without warning. Every institution you rely on today, financial, political, social, legal, is on a demolition schedule, not because people are evil, because the people who knew why those institutions existed are gone. Which parallel hits you the hardest? 1776, 1861, 1941, or today? Comment the year you think we are closest to repeating. I will pin the most compelling answer. The pattern's code. Here is what the pattern also tells us. And this is the part that almost nobody talks about. Every single fourth turning in American history ended the same way. Not in permanent collapse, but in a new order stronger than what came before. The revolutionary crisis ended with the Constitution. the most durable governing document in modern history, still standing 250 years later. The Civil War crisis ended with the abolition of slavery and a fundamentally redefined America. The Great Depression and World War II crisis ended with the most prosperous era in human history. The post-war boom that built the middle class, raised life expectancy, and reduced poverty at rates never seen before or since. Destruction precedes creation. The pattern does not predict doom. It predicts transformation. The institutions that must fall will fall because they can no longer serve the world that is emerging. And what replaces them is built by the people awake enough to understand what is actually happening. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. You are living through one of the rarest moments in human history, a civilizational reset that occurs once every 80 years. The question is not whether the old order falls. It is whether you understand what is happening well enough to help build what comes next. Comment Seculum if you made it this far and you are ready to see what comes after the storm. Every 80 years, history does not simply repeat. It recycles. It takes the same raw materials: human ambition, human fear, collective memory, and generational forgetting, and runs them through the same machine until something breaks. Cycle after cycle, the people living through the Revolutionary War did not know they were in a fourth turning. Neither did the soldiers of the Civil War, nor the children watching Europe burn in 1941. But you now know something they never had. You have a map, not a comfortable one, not one that guarantees safety, but a map is more than most people ever get. The pattern is not your enemy. The pattern is your warning. The question is not whether the old world will be replaced. It already is being replaced, right now, in real time, all around you. The question is what you will choose to carry into the new one. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It does more than rhyme. It has a beat. And now, for the first time, you can hear it. Comment Seculum to prove you made it to the end, and to join the small group of people who understand what most of the world refuses to admit. The truth is stranger than anything you could make up. If your brain is as blown as mine right now, hit subscribe, because next time it gets even crazier.